waiting for 3 days outside the Apple Store.
Wait is almost over for iPhone fans. New this morning.
A chaotic scene outside the Apple Store in Pasadena. Police had to break up several fights.
Believe it or not, there was once a time where Apple products actually got cheaper over time.
The original model in 2001 was $400. When the final model was released in 2009, it was $250. And the changes made during that time were dramatic. Paying less for these big improvements is probably unimaginable for Apple users today, since we've been conditioned to expect endless price increases.
Which all started in 2017 when Apple launched the iPhone 8 and iPhone X, aka the iPhone 10. The iPhone jumped from $650 to now $700 for the iPhone 8 and a whopping $1,000 for the iPhone 10. Its all new bezel-less stainless steel design made it the new shiny product that everyone wanted, especially because Apple's design was getting really repetitive. With the last 3 iPhones looking exactly the same, Apple had the audacity to repeat the design again. And we would see a similar pattern starting from the iPhone 12, as since then the iPhone design has been virtually the same every year. But the phones were getting more expensive as well, with their cheapest iPhone increasing from $430 to now $600 with the iPhone 16e, and it looked exactly like every other iPhone. But it wasn't just physical hardware innovation that was stagnant, it was software too. Features that existed on Android for years still hadn't existed on the iPhone. Apple became infamously known for withholding upgrading certain elements of the iPhone, knowing it wouldn't be enough for users to stop buying them. Still to this day, the baseline iPhone 16 doesn't have a 120Hz ProMotion display, despite even some $200 Androids having it. Widgets have existed on Android for over a decade before Apple introduced them only in 2020. Apple was known to improve the camera each year, but that was it. Apple needed something new, so in 2023, Apple launched their first major new Apple product in roughly 10 years since the introduction of the Apple Watch, the Apple Vision Pro. The hype of this project was unreal, as augmented reality seemed to be the future, and it was commonly known that Apple typically only launched entirely new products when they knew they could outshine their competitors. And while their technology was undeniably magical, as you could literally interact with it just with your eyes and hands, it was the same price as a used Honda, $3,500, which was criminally unreasonably expensive. On top of that, it was incredibly uncomfortable because of its weight, and it only had a 2-hour battery that was externally attached. The initial sales highly underperformed, which discouraged developers from creating apps on it. And without even some basic apps like Netflix or Spotify, the Apple Vision Pro quickly fell off the radar, being their greatest flop of all time. Soon after, behind closed doors, it was reported that Apple had spent more than $10 billion on an Apple car before canceling it. Apple's reputation was tanking for the lack of innovation and increased prices, but it would get even worse as they would start to hide the truth. For every single app on the App Store, Apple takes either a 15 or 30% cut for any in-app purchase that is a digital service. Basically, Apple is like, if y'all make money through us, we gotta make some of that bread too. And you weren't allowed to link purchases outside the app, because then you would avoid their fee. So for the apps that are pretty much virtual stores or virtual subscriptions, Apple made bank just for hosting that app. And no one could do anything about it because the App Store was so well established. Until Tim Sweeney, CEO of Epic Games and Fortnite, entered the chat. Fortnite was dominating the world as it had these insane collabs and crossovers that created huge cultural moments. Fortnite was everywhere. They made all of their money off of in-app purchases since the app was kindly free. And that meant for any new skin or pass or V-Bucks purchased, Apple would always take a 30% cut. This resulted in massive amounts of profit loss for Epic Games and massive profit gains for Apple, and Tim Sweeney wasn't having it. Apple has locked down and crippled the ecosystem by inventing an absolute monopoly on the distribution of software and on the monetization of it. They come off the top before funding any developer costs. As a result, Apple and Google make more profit from most developers' games than the developers themselves. That is terribly unfair and exploitative. It pains me to complain about Apple in this way. Apple is one of the greatest companies that has ever existed, perhaps the greatest. But they're fundamentally wrong in blocking competition and choice on devices they make, and that holds up entire fields of technological progress. So Epic began scheming a way to lawyer Apple through Project Liberty, their plan to free itself from App Store commissions. Behind the scenes, they developed a team of the lawyers to become the people's champ and take down these unfair fees. And so on August 13th, they released an update in Fortnite that would allow them to bypass Apple's commission fee and even gave users a discount, in which Fortnite would immediately get kicked off the App Store for violating Apple's policies, which was all part of Epic's plan to start a war, filing a lawsuit against Apple that same day. Instantly, hashtag Free Fortnite was trending and the people were already on Epic's side, but things didn't go initially as planned.
Things have begun to look quite bad for Epic. You see, the outcome of that initial trial, the original one, was an almost complete defeat for Epic Games. They basically could not prove being the emphasis word there, that any kind of monopoly or unfair action was going on. But there was one exception. An injunction was placed against Apple, and this was to end anti-steering provisions.
This meant that Apple could no longer steer users away from making purchases outside the app. So Apple complied, but in a strange manner. Apple inserted this pop-up, making it seem like it was dangerous to purchase things outside of the app, basically discouraging users to do so. Sweeney called them scare screens. And the judge was not happy about this. Apple willfully chose not to comply with this court's injunction. It did so with the express intent to create new anti-competitive barriers which would, by design and in effect, maintain a valued revenue stream, a revenue stream previously found to be anti-competitive. That it thought that this court would tolerate such insubordination was a gross miscalculation. As always, the cover-up made it worse. For this court, there is no second bite at the apple. The judge knew Apple was trying to finesse. Judge Yvonne Gonzalez-Rogers says that an Apple executive outright lied. Roman lied when testifying that Apple hadn't decided on the 27% number for its fees on purchases outside the App Store until January 16th, 2024. That's what Roman said, but it was later revealed that it was decided on July 2023. Neither Apple nor its counsel corrected the now obvious lies. After 5 years of going back and forth, Epic had finally beat Apple and won the case, and Fortnite was back on the App Store. The exact day it was back, tons of app developers released updates so that users could now make purchases outside of the app, with an epic reversal, with Apple now losing billions of dollars. But this was just the first lie that would majorly backfire. In 2023, AI rapidly started booming like no other. Apple typically took their sweet time when it came to launching new products so they could gauge the competition, but this time, they realized that they should have hopped on the AI wagon because they were already falling behind. So at WWDC 2024, Apple announced the revamped AI Siri 2.0, and it was promising. They literally made it seem like Jarvis from Iron Man. You could just talk to it and it would appear to function as if a human was in the computer. So the people were hyped. Then in September that year, they did something they've never done before. They released an unfinished iPhone. Their entire marketing scheme of why you should buy the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro was because it had the so-called revolutionary Apple intelligence. But it didn't have it. Make that make sense. We should have known because there were literally no demos done at WWDC. Which, when there's no demos because it don't work. The only thing that did work was the cosmetic new Siri animation, which looks so sick and futuristic that everybody was like, ooh, in which that distracted most people from the delays of all of the AI features missing. They even put out a commercial previewing the revamped AI Siri.
Siri, what's the name of the guy I had a meeting with a couple of months ago at Cafe Grinnell?
You met Zach Wingate at Cafe Grinnell.
Hey!
Zach!
Oh, wow, I didn't think you'd remember me.
People were hyped because it looked actually useful, but it was actually unavailable. You see, in the fine print, it said coming soon, and then a few months later, they finally launched some of the AI features. Some of them were fun, like Genmoji, some could be useful, like Magic Eraser, ChatGPT integration, and writing summaries, but AI Siri was nowhere to be found. And Siri was getting worse. An iPhone literally gave a complete false notification summary, so much so that Apple had to suspend that feature. Apple, for the first time in a long time, overpromised and underdelivered. And the worst part was, the new features themselves weren't even finished. They were in beta. More like booty. Basically now, if people complained, Apple could say, well, it's because it's just in beta. And then they did this again. They brought in some new features like visual intelligence, but AI Siri went backwards. IA Siri, that is MIA. It got worse. 6 months after their launch in March 2025, every single Apple product was plastered with Apple Intelligence, with the real AI being nowhere to be seen. In which Apple did something sus. Remember that ad? Yeah, they deleted it. Quietly, but obviously everyone noticed, nearly confirming that what they had anticipated doing with AI Siri wasn't realistic or possible at all. They ended up releasing a super low-key statement saying from a random outlet, "It's going to take us longer than we thought to deliver on these features, and we anticipate rolling them out in the coming year." But then reports came out that they were apparently delayed to 2026? Excuse me? Pretty much they were like, AI Siri is coming to the iPhone 16, actually early next year in 2025. You know what? We might as well go for 2026, or who knows, let's just say whenever. We should have known that Apple would bamboozle us and hypnotize us into thinking these features were real. They even misled themselves. In April of 2025, reports came out that the demo apparently came as a surprise to members of the Siri team who had never seen working versions of the capabilities. Meaning they showed a concept video at WWDC 2024, not features that actually existed. It was all fake. The only feature from WWDC demonstration that was activated on test devices was Apple Intelligence's pulsing colorful ribbon around the edge of the display. But it functioned just as the old Siri. This led to Apple being sued again through a class action lawsuit for false advertising, which is still going on as of August 2025. On top of that, internally Apple is apparently doing some reshuffling as their AI plans are struggling. And in the worst possible timing, Apple has also lost more than $300 billion from Trump's tariffs, as 90% of Apple products are made in China. As of August 20th, 2025, there are reports that apparently Apple is working ambitiously on AI robots. In Apple's defense, it's clear that AI is advancing faster than anyone can really keep up with. In addition to that, most consumer products like the iPhone are now really good and have peaked, with not as much room to improve as before. And it seems like the average consumer could really care less about AI features. Ironically, Apple customers are notoriously known to be the ones complaining about the iPhone as they are in line to buy the next one. While Apple's rep is at an all-time low, and it seems like customers are starting to lose trust, the numbers say otherwise, as Apple even won Q1 of global smartphone sales for the first time in history, beating Samsung, who would normally always take Q1 because of their release of their flagships in the beginning of the year. And they are still the number 3 biggest company in the world. But what do y'all think? With the release of apparently a new iPhone Air, could Apple bounce back, or are they at their tipping point? Would anyone go as far as to switch to an Android? Let me know in the comments and subscribe if you're human. Peace!